All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome. So excited to have you here today. Thank you to those who were here day one, day two, those who are here today, whether you're live or watching the replay. So glad to have you here. We're going to start out by doing a little bit of a recap from yesterday mainly. Day one, I had like my intentions of how I wanted to run this. And I always, everything I do is leaned into what I feel like I'm supposed to be doing. And so there are times where I have an idea and I want to go with something. And whether you believe it's, spirit, conscience, higher self, whatever, I feel like I sometimes get directed that I need to share something else. So day one was a bit scattered and all over the place because I was trying to figure out like, this is what I want to do. This is what I'm feeling, like what is going on. And I've done some work, and today we're going to be open and just kind of see what happens. And I invite you to do the same. I know that when I have learned to do that in my life, I get so much more out of it. So I'm excited to see what comes through today. So we're going to start off by doing a little review of yesterday. So yesterday we talked about how, let's see, how high can I turn this? Okay. We talked about how there are kind of two different ways we tend to react to emotion. Way one is there's us, and it feels like there's all this emotion all over the place. And it becomes so intense at times that we can't even see ourselves. Right? Just emotion. On the other side, we have the experience of this is terrible. I don't like this. I don't want this. I'm afraid of losing myself in my emotion. So instead, I'm going to do the opposite. I'm going to put up this barrier, build this wall, and I'm going to keep all my emotions over here out of the way. Okay. And for example, we were talking about emotions being like clouds. And sometimes you have big rain clouds, sometimes you have white fluffy clouds, and clouds in and of themselves are neither good nor bad. They're just different. And the same way we think about clouds, we can think about emotions. They're neither good nor bad. They're just different. Okay. Now, both of these models can get us into trouble, right? Because here's the thing, when you build a wall, you don't get to pick and choose which emotions are on this side of the wall, right? We can't say, excuse me, I'm going to put all of the bad emotions, bad, right? Because it's just a cloud. It's not good or bad, bad. Or negative emotions, dense, heavy, those emotions that make us want to go, ugh, right? Versus, yeah, open us up, make us feel light. These dense, heavy emotions, and keep the fluffy cloud ones over here. Doesn't work that way. It's all or nothing. So when we cut ourselves off from pain, from discomfort, from fear, we are also cutting ourselves off from joy, love, connection. Okay? And most of us experience some minor version of these two, right? So maybe we're doing a pretty good job of like being us and having some emotions, just kind of smaller ones. We're keeping them there. And then every once in a while, we're like, okay, I'm going to work now, so I can't have emotions. So now I'm going to build my wall and put my emotions over here until I come home. But I don't want to deal with them now that I'm home. So I'm going to start buffering, watching TV, overeating, binge buying stuff, right? Over anything builds this wall and keeps our emotions over here. And then maybe in the morning, I've let my wall down a little bit and they're coming in. And now let's say, maybe it's the weekend or I have a day off and I want to take some time for myself and I'm going to start processing them. And they like start to infringe a little bit on me. but I don't completely lose myself in them, but I'm still like, oh, it's all over. I don't know how to deal with this, right? These are kind of the like in between stages. We also talked about our goal is to become like this. Here's me. Here's my emotions. I neither have walls nor am I disconnected from them, nor are they overwhelming me, right? This is the calm in the storm, right? You have this internal storm that's going on, whether it's high or low, and you are present, able to walk through it all. Okay? And I compared this to what I call, trying to figure out the best way to get more space. Let's actually do it this way. Compared this to, I don't want it to fall. Okay. The pendulum principle. And actually, before I do that, this is an important thing to know. So this one is, I have no control over my emotions. This version is, I control my emotions. And this one is, I am friends with my emotion. I don't know if any of you watched The Dog Whisperer. My family recently got into it and I am obsessed. I love it. And part of the reason I love it is I can't help but see similarities between the work he does and the work I do. Disclaimer every time I say that, I am not saying people are dogs and that we need to treat them the same way, right? But there are similarities in some of the basic principles and we apply them in a dog way or a human way, respectively. For example, this, especially our emotions, right? Our emotions are that more animalistic piece of us, right? It's the back part of our biology that's there to kind of just keep us alive, right? That's what animals have, is their version of it, right? So I have no control is kind of like the dog who's just wild and all over the place, right? Just completely out of control. I control my emotions is like trying to put your dog in a kennel and like just do these makeshift ways to try and control their behavior. You're not doing anything to fix it. You're just controlling it. And what we want and what Caesar is so good at doing is bringing it back where we can have a relationship with the dog, right? Where we're friends. And that's very similar to what I want to do with your emotions, right? We want to stop viewing them as this wild, uncontrollable thing that we can't deal with. We don't want to just like lock them up in a kennel all the time. So similarly, we need to learn how to be the pack leader, learn how to take that position over our emotions, find that balance. I'm trying to decide if I'm going to review the pendulum principle now or not. I think I'm going to wait. I think it's going to fit better later. So, going off of what we just talked about, becoming that pack leader for your emotions, right? That's kind of the essence of today's video and what we're going to be talking about, okay? How do you do that? When we look at Caesar and he's working with the dogs, he understands a few things. And some of those apply more directly to dogs. Some of them, though, there's a parallel to how we interact with our emotions. That's part of what we're going to talk about. The first is, you'll notice a lot of what he teaches is it's usually not the dog's fault. It's usually the human who, for whatever reason, right? Maybe they didn't know, maybe they didn't understand, maybe, whatever, was not holding up a leader position. And dogs, based on their social structure, need that pack leader, right? The lesson that we can kind of apply to that ourselves is it's never our emotions' fault, right? And this can be really, really difficult to adapt sometimes or accept. I think back to some of my most intense emotional experiences. I had depression. I don't know if there's a formal term like prepartum, but while I was pregnant with my second son, really bad. Like I can't get out of bed, I can't function, I have no desire, right? And it felt like it was consuming me. I felt this very much like I don't even know who I am anymore. And then similarly, after he was born, I had postpartum depression, right? And the one thing I do want to clarify here, right, is there is a biological component of our emotions, right? Because the way we experience emotion in our bodies comes from our biology, right? And so, yes, your hormones can be out of whack and can play a role in different things, right? But I find it is not very useful for me to say, I'm at the mercy of my emotions and at the mercy of my biology. In my case, I have always found it to be far more empowering, far more easy to move through the experience when I am willing to take back ownership over how I feel. And a piece of this comes, like, for example, after my son was born, he was born via an emergency C-section. Afterwards, I still looked like I was fully pregnant, right? And it's normal, like, to still look like you're pregnant, but like completely. And it didn't go away. And I had lots of pain. And come to find out, a few years back, I had a random blood vessel just start bleeding. They cauterized it, but it didn't heal properly, and it formed an ulcer that perforated. So I had a hole in my stomach that was leaking air into my abdomen. It's crazy. Had to have surgery. They stitched it all up. Well, after my son was born, that wound came back. It had perforated again, and why I looked still pregnant was because I had all this air in my abdomen. So this time I had to go in for surgery again, and they just removed that part of my stomach. Went home for a little while and then got an infection and was back in the hospital, ended up in the ICU. Like, the infection got really, really bad and really scary, like near death type experience. And I finally recovered, finally made it home. And that's like enough to mess with you anyways, right? But then you're dealing with all of the hormones from my body of like pregnancy, and all of now my gut was destroyed too because I was on these really strong antibiotics to fight the infections, right? Like, my body was a mess trying to recover. And as a result, I was a mess emotionally, right? And so part of that is, instead of resisting the situation and what was going on, for me, I started out by getting on an antidepressant, right? I needed to support my body. I got on lots of probiotics to start rebuilding that gut health, right? So we can acknowledge the biology side. We can do things to help support our bodies and give it what it needs, right? But while I was doing that, I was also working on my own emotions, my own healing work, right? Because this is a really neat thing about our emotions. They're actually guides for us. They tell us when something is aligned for us and when something is not aligned. Turn this a little bit, not aligned, okay? And what I mean by that is, when we experience, when I pause like that, or look off to the side or different things, those are moments where I'm tuning in, I'm opening up, I want to check in if the direction I want to take is correct or is the best way that I can. So that's what was going on there. So our emotions, right? I want you to think about anger is a really good one to look at. We've experienced anger. I'm sure a lot of you, if you've studied mental health at all, have seen like the iceberg model. And anger is like the part that's visible above the water that we can see. But underneath, there's a whole bunch of other stuff going on. Anger is often considered a secondary emotion. And what that means is it's alerting us to essentially our emotional homeostasis being out of whack, right? We've got something stirring up underneath, whether that's feeling shame is a big one, guilt, sadness, fear, right? That anger is like, hey, big red siren over here. You need to pay attention. There's something going on underneath, okay? Then we can go in and we can find these other emotions and go, oh, what am I feeling shame about? What am I feeling guilt about? What am I afraid of, right? And those emotions direct us in ways that we can grow and progress, right? I'm feeling shame that I'm not good enough, that I can't do this. Okay, well, let's look at that. Are you really not good enough? I have a whole webinar talking about being enough. The replay's on my YouTube channel, and I think there's a link in my Instagram. I will also post it in the email with the replay. So if you want to go listen to that, it's a really good one. But it's this idea of talking about who you are by the very nature of you existing. You have worth. Your worth, being enough, does not come by anything you do, anything about you physically, mentally, spiritually, emotionally, any of that. It's part of your essence, right? And our emotions are always directing us back to our essence, okay? So that's the like negative side of it, right? And we can start getting curious. And that's what I do with a lot of my coaching clients is we dig in. What are the stories behind there? Are those stories true? Are they serving us? Are they helping us to become more whole, more aligned, more alive, more ourselves, right? That feeling of being alive, that's when you are aligning with the essence of who you are, living your full nature, living the truest expression of you, right? That's the goal, okay? And on the other side, we have our positive emotions, right? Joy, happiness, excitement, love, right? And these emotions, well, love is a special one. We're going to talk about that next. These emotions are a way of saying, yes, you're doing it, right? You're coming along. You're coming into alignment, right? That's why they feel good. There's no dissonance there, right? I was a piano player took piano for years, all growing up. And I love using the piano as an analogy. I want you to think about the quote unquote negative or bad emotions. Those are kind of like playing chords that don't quite fit and they like sound squeaky in the ear. That doesn't sound quite right is a signal, hey, something's off here. It's not quite right. And it gives you that alert so that you can bring it back into a chord that harmonizes, right? That's when we experience these joyful emotions, is when we can get that harmony coming into play. We're removing the dissonance. We're coming into alignment with who we are, the truest expression of ourselves, showing up in all areas of our life, right? So these are kind of like the two experiences we have. And this is where I'm going to talk about the pendulum principle again, which we introduced yesterday. So go back and watch the video if you want to see how the pendulum principle applies to this for yesterday. Today, you know what? I am going to tip it. Actually, I'm just going to erase it. We're done with that review. Okay, so pendulum principle, something I came up with to help my organizing clients back when I was mainly just a professional organizer. And in essence, go watch the video yesterday if you want to hear the background story of how it relates to organizing. Today, we're going to jump in a little bit deeper and more fundamental. Thank goodness. My ones that attached to my ear broke, so I'm having to use these and drive me a little bit nuts today. Okay, so here's the essence of the pendulum principle, though. On one side, we have what we were talking about before, right? This is misaligned, dissonance, not self. Yeah. On this side, we have manufactured perfection, illusion, counterfeit, imposter. Okay. Right here in the middle is actually the real goal. This is our goal. This is freedom. This is success. This is authenticity. This is wholeness. This is alignment. Okay. Growth. Lots of things. Okay. When we have positive emotions, they are emanating from here. They're being like, yes, good job. That's how we recognize that we're there. Okay? Positive emotion. This is expansive. Light. Right? Joy, happiness, right? These are negative emotions. Okay. These ones, I'm going to open. Feel more dense, tight. I'm going to say / restrictive. It's kind of like the opposite of open. And contracting. So we can have contracting or expansive, dense or light, tight and restrictive, or open. Okay. You can't read any of these. That's okay. And so what normally happens is we're going along life and we start at one of these two places. Right? Now, misaligned dissonant self often shows up in extremes as, actually, we're going to use a teenager example, okay? Because it's a perfect model. So teenagers have lots of emotions, right? How they can be very overwhelming. Right? This teenager, someone who's hanging out over here, they're the rebellious teenager. They're acting out, right? This over here, though, is the teenager who is super obedient, doesn't stray away, like good girl, right? Good girl, good boy. Two different teenagers, right? They both are going to be having emotion going on, and they're both going to be expressing it differently. Okay? This one, it's pretty easy to see, right? Anger, very visible. They're going to let you know how they feel. They're going to be calling you out. This is stupid. This is dumb. You're terrible. Life's unfair, right? You also can see it's more of an outward expression of that anger. Right? This one is deceptive, right? I was this one. This one looks like we're waiting for the teenager phase to hit. Nothing is happening yet. What's going on? And we can get into this state of false sense of security, like, oh, I guess my teenager's doing great, right? They're not going through this normal struggle over here, right? But I will tell you, remember, this is manufactured. This is the illusion, the counterfeit, the imposter. This child is emulating. They have not yet embodied it yet, right? And that's part of the developmental process, right? They're not meant to be fully embodied it. Teenager, when we're a teenager, that's part of that transition from, shoot, what were the words I said? Emulation, right? To embodiment. Okay. Oh, you can't even see that. That's okay. That's like part of the natural journey, right? When we're little children, toddlers, we need to first learn how to emulate walking, talking, eating, right? And that continues as we're children and we grow and grow and grow. And when we become a teenager, we start making that shift to embodying it. And we are no longer doing things simply because we were told to. This is the way things are. This is what mom and dad do, right? And we start developing our own identities more and our own reasons for the things we want to do in our lives. And that shift can be rocky, right? There's a lot of emotions that go on. And I will tell you, this child is having emotions they're probably not even aware of. Okay? I did a lot of therapy. Love my parents, wonderful people. Please make sure we know that, okay? This is not a blame on them by any means. But from my own experience, I have spent years doing therapy and healing and all sorts of stuff around this period in my life because I was pretending, right? And at the root of a lot of this was actually anger. The exact same. But I had no idea I was angry or what I was even angry about. Right? That's a whole nother conversation for another day about discovering that anger, how to find it, how to deal with it, all of that. If you want to know more about that, if you feel like it might be yourself or a child or whatever, reach out. We can talk about what that coaching and experience can look like. Okay. But this anger is still there. The problem is this child has decided, oh, anger is a negative emotion. I'm going to build that wall, right? Put my anger over here where I can't feel it. And because I can't build a wall and keep some of my emotions on this side with me, what happens is these become less genuine. The counterfeits, right? Copies. They're not deep to your soul feeling alive, right? And so it can appear as if everything is okay because we have, it's like, there's clouds here, right? Over here with me and la la la, everything's good. Really, there's this giant wall and all the genuine, authentic, full expression of emotion, that feeling that makes you feel alive, right? Whether it's good or bad, right? These people have learned they feel alive when they have their emotions, right? It's a big piece of it. So they're like, bring it on. I don't care if I'm acting out. I don't care if I'm bad. I feel alive. And I want more of that. Some of them go so far, right, that they start to disconnect and they start to identify as rebellious, as, right, this I'm trying to find the best way to describe it. I don't know, this energy of like, I don't care, nothing matters, right? And what tends to happen is because we're not aware, oh wait, but this anger, so anger outward, anger usually inward here. Okay. And in both cases, these unprocessed anger can lead to things like depression, anxiety, right? Now, a lot of us don't have this understanding, don't have this background, right? And so we're not quite sure this is aligned adulthood, okay? This is the goal, right? Remember, self-expression, authenticity. Oh, part of that is responsibility. Again, these ones, they're gonna look like they're being responsible, but it's a counterfeit, it's an illusion, it's an imposter. They haven't actually developed, everything is surface level for them, right? Surface, surface, surface. Nothing has penetrated into the essence of who they're being. They are disconnected, right? Disconnected from who they are. These people are so consumed in trying to be themselves. They're sick of being put in boxes. I'm a free spirit, right? You can't define me. But that can go to such an extreme that like they can't do anything useful with it, right? It's just chaos. Which again, pendulum basic principle. This side is always chaos. This side is control. These people are willing to live chaotic lives, willing to embrace the chaos because they are craving that soul expression, that authenticity. Right? These people are willing to control every aspect of who they are, how they live their life, right? They're often very organized, very structured, right? That's that trying to control piece, okay? Because what they want is the ability to have that supported structure, right? There's two pieces there. Now, ideally, we grow up, we come into alignment with ourselves. And that's what happens in adulthood. That's when we become this adult. But what usually happens is this doesn't last throughout the teenage phase, right? Because we're not the best at learning how to understand this for ourselves, let alone teach it to our children, right? We kind of have to trial and error and figure it out. My goal is trying to help you understand this so you can have a better pattern and not have to trial and error it quite as much. Okay? To understand the process and how to be most effective in the different phases of it. Okay? So anyways, we grow up, we're living this like perfect controlled life, right? This is usually people that are like, and I go to college and I graduate and I get married and I have the kids and I have the job and I whatever. And then by the time they're like 35, 40, it's like, I have everything, but I'm not happy. And I don't know how to process that because by every definition, like, what do you have to complain about? Your life is so wonderful. Your life is so amazing. Why aren't you happy? Well, they're not happy because they're not connected to themselves. They can't experience the depth of their emotions because they've locked them away. They only have counterfeit, manufactured illusion, imposter versions of them. And after a while, it feels pretty empty. They're craving reconnection with this. On the other side, we have these folks may or may not go to college, may or may not graduate, may not hold a job. They're hopping all over the place. They're more likely to get into drugs, be like totally open and carefree with their sex lives, right? A big piece of that is just because they're just to it all, right? And as a result, though, they can't really get any momentum in their life in being able to achieve their goals and being able to show up, make an impact, right? Because they're just all over the place, right? Hopping from one thing to another, consumed by whatever pleasure or fancy is coming along. Okay. Somewhere along the line, I know people and the drugs that they get into a treatment center finally, right? And they're like, okay, I'm done with this life. And they're starting to try and come back into balance. Same way these people, hit 35, 40, and they're like, this is not working. Right? In either case, disease tends to pop up, right? That can be mental, emotional, physical, spiritual disease, right? That living, especially the more extreme you live here, right? Some people are hanging out more here. Some people are all the way out here, right? These are your workaholics often, and these are your like total drug addicts. They've got a lot further to come into alignment with themselves. But they also have far more extreme experiences in their life that it's much easier in a way for them to recognize I am way misaligned, right? People who are hanging out kind of in here, it can be harder to tell, right? It's like, my life's pretty good. Not much to complain about. It's not too bad, right? But they're not living that true, full expression of life, right? That's my goal, is to get as many people as I can aligned with who they are, the brilliance of that, and living their best life. Because this, it's good, but I want the best for you. And here's the thing, when it's the best for you in your life, it's the best for the world. So the more people we have living here, the better our world gets. Right? So anyways, pendulum principle, going back to kind of the basics with it, says we spend most of our life we may start out over here and we're like, you know what? I don't want this very much. I want to get over here. This looks like a better experience in my life. So we're going along. Remember, this extends all the way out. My drawing's not off, but it would be in the middle. Okay. And we hit that point. We're like, yes, this is awesome. This is amazing. I love this. I want to keep going, doing what we were doing, right? Moving in that same direction, thinking linearly. Right? This is another way to think of it is, here's my past behind me. Didn't really like that experience. I want something different for my future. I'm going to chase after that goal. I'm going to go for it, work for it, right? And so this is like climbing the mountain, and I'm pushing and I'm going for it, right? But we hit this point where we're like, I'm not really experiencing it. I've arrived, right? Whatever that looks like. I've lost the weight. I've achieved the goal, made the money, whatever it is. And I don't feel like this. Right? So maybe we keep doing that. Maybe we keep hanging out, keep trying. Eventually, right, that's kind of similar to like you're pushing up the mountain. This is where hustle culture comes from. Like, I just gotta bustle through, make my way, right? And there comes this inevitable thing of like 2 steps forward, 1 step back, right? And we go, step back. I failed. Okay, I just gotta try harder. Keep going, right? Step back is realizing I'm not in alignment, right? So then eventually there comes a point where we're like, okay, this isn't working. I'm gonna try something different. Start going this way. And eventually you hit that sweet spot again, and it's like, yes, it worked. I figured it out this time. Right? And so we keep doing that thing, thinking this is what's gonna make me happy. And the exact same problem happens. We arrive and we're unsatisfied. And the same thing can happen starting out over here. They're like, oh my gosh, I have been insane. I need to let up a little bit in my life. You experience this like moment point of balance, right? It's another key. Balance. And so we keep doing that, letting loose, and eventually we're like, oh my gosh, this is not what I thought, right? Okay. Linear perspective. We shift to a pendulum perspective though, right? And we recognize, hey, this isn't the goal, right? I'm trying to just hustle my way up the mountain and like, I wasn't good enough. I failed. I had this mistake. Set me back. Let's keep going. Let's keep going. Right? How much energy does that take? How awful does that feel? How uncomfortable, right? Pendulum principle instead says, instead of being linear in our perspective, let's focus on embracing that second dimension, the pendulum, and work on making our swings smaller and smaller, smaller, until we get closer and closer to that midpoint. Okay? That's the actual goal. And when you look at it in this perspective, I'm not hustling up that mountain and take a step back, and hustling up that mountain and I'm taking a step back. I've gone into this other dimension here, and I'm recognizing sometimes I'm moving over here, and then I come back, have a great moment, and then I move over here, and then I come back. And the goal is not to do this. Right? It's very exhausting, very tiring, takes a lot of energy. Right? But as we get better at going smaller, smaller in our swings, until this is dancing through life. And this becomes fun. This doesn't take tons of energy. I'm not hustling, but I'm still embracing these two sides, okay? Okay. That's your class for today. Tomorrow, we're bringing back the emotion. How do we do the dance and have the emotion? Actually, scratch that. Tomorrow's Sunday, so this is going to be on Monday, okay? On Monday, I'm going to teach you how to do the dance and have that balance with your emotions. It's going to be awesome. Can't wait to see you then.